Hi guys, Lou Antonio here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use my profit margin calculator. Now this may look a little simplistic or it might look more complicated, it depends, but I use this pretty much for all of my brands that I work with. These are brands doing 200k a month, and we still refer to this when it comes to looking at releasing a new product or just looking at our acquisition costs. And this really will become your Bible, because if you don't get this done correctly, this technically should be one of the first things you do when you're starting up a brand, or even if you're looking to scale, because if the numbers don't work, your business won't work. So pay attention to this. It's super easy to use. We'll go through everything cell by cell, and what I want you to do is just to plug in your product. Again, if you have a Hero product, or if you have multiple products, you can just duplicate the tabs. So let's get into it. This is split into your raw production costs, your 3PL if you decide to use one. Then we'll get down to your total unit costs. We look at how much you're going to retail it for, and then we'll do the thing that everyone forgets, which is building in your cost of sales. Like, this is one of the most important parts, and at the end, what we want to see is this cell here in the green. Okay, now this will automatically update if it's too high to go in the red. So let's get into it. And as I said, you can do this real time if you want. You have access to this calculator. So first things first, the raw manufacturing cost of your product. So I want you to put this in here. So this is how much all in. So add in, I don't know if you have multiple elements of your products. For here, I've created different cells, but if you don't have things such as like packaging to build in or handling costs, you can just get rid of them, because the only thing that matters here is the cell at the end, which is the total cost. And this is delivered either to customer or to 3PL. And again, it depends on your setup. Some like to, if you're dropshipping, for example, you can dropship directly from the supplier. For brands who maybe have custom products, they will send inventory to a 3PL, and obviously if you use a 3PL, there's more layered in costs. So it's really important to have these factored in, because if you don't get this right, it's very, very difficult, almost impossible for you to be able to make profit, because you don't understand the numbers. And let's be honest, the reason we're in e-com, the reason we're running businesses is to make profit. Okay, so back to the cell. So first of all, this is just raw cost of goods for your product. If you have any ancillary as I said, sometimes suppliers will charge you for film or for packaging. I don't know if there's like certain components. Just make sure these are all added in, and you can change the titles of these cells. It doesn't matter, because the only number that matters here is the total, which is at the end, and this will just basically sum up everything. The reason this says delivery is because, again, you don't have to have it in there. The delivery is if you're shipping to a 3PL. Okay, so let's assume we're manufacturing for $12. There might be labels if it's a supplement, for example, 12 cents, and it will cost them 50 pence. And this, bear in mind, this whole calculator is on a per unit cost, okay? Because we're trying to ascertain how much we can buy and sell products for and still make a profit. So that's your production costs. Next, we move over to a 3PL. So again, if you're not using a 3PL, you can just zero out all of these numbers, and this will go to zero. And this is basically everything to do with booking in your stock, with picking, with packing, with the boxes that it needs to go out in, any sort of ancillary fees. And obviously the most important one is how much is your 3PL costing you to ship directly to the consumer. And again, if you're drop shipping, you can build this into just the manufacturing side and zero this out, okay? So the number you're going to get here is the total of how much it costs for you to make the product and send the product. So this is raw, basic numbers as to how much it costs you to make and ship each product, okay? This will dictate a lot, because this is when we then start to add in our margin. If we don't understand our margin, it's impossible for us to make profit. So let's look into the product retail price. So we now know, delivered to the consumer, this is exactly how much it's going to cost you to actually make and ship your product. So now it's a case of how can we build in pricing that allows us to obviously make profit, but then also build in two things. And these two things everyone forgets about. It's not just buy something for 10, sell it for 20, make $10 profit. It would be nice if that was the case, but remember, you have an inherent cost of sales, okay? And also it costs you to run the business. So we need to factor out how much we can afford to layer in an OPEX, and OPEX means operational expenses, and that's basically the cost of you running a business. And then also how much we can factor in to acquire a customer. So this is where it really gets a bit more saucy, and these are really important, so don't skip this. So here we want to play around with our RRPs, so that's obviously your retail price. And what we're looking for, and this is like a bare minimum standard, I would always say between 60 and 70% margin. This is what you want to be able to make on a per unit cost of profit. And you can play around with these numbers as well. And if you want more of an overarching principle, the way I look at this is price high and justify, because if you do and you make a lower margin, it reduces your profitability, it reduces how much you can afford to pay to acquire a customer. And let's be honest, the brands who can pay the most to acquire customers are the ones that will always win. Okay, so having a big fat margin on that is really, really important. And again, the strategies we can dig into in the course around how we do this, but basically it's all around building in perceived value. Okay, so always just think price high and justify. Do not go, I'm just going to do a lower price and I'm going to shift volume, because you still have to pay more to shift volume. You have to do more marketing, which means you have less profit per sale. Okay, so here RRP, you can play around this number, that's why it's in green. This will tell you how much profit you will make selling at, say, $61. And this number here basically is the retail cost minus how much it costs for you to make the product. So this is still really basic. And then you have an automatic margin calculator at the end. And your sweet spot really, I would say, for e-com is around 65% as a bare minimum. Ideally, you want to be way more than that. So hopefully this is all making sense so far. Now we're going to jump into two things, and this is your cost of sales and also how much it's going to cost you to actually run the business. And again, in the beginning, a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about this at all. As I said, they keep it very simplistic. I'm just going to buy for 10, sell for 20, and I've made myself $10, when we all know that isn't the case. So first and foremost, we need to figure out how much can we afford to spend to acquire a customer. And this is what this number is here. You see, PA stands for cost per acquisition. The OPEX here is a total sum of all of your operational overheads, and you can add in different numbers here, and this will be different depending on how much operational complexity you have. One thing I would always recommend building in as well, even though you don't have to take it from the start, is some sort of wage or salary for yourself as the entrepreneur, because let's be honest, you want to build this business to serve you as opposed to you serving the business. And I know in the beginning you kind of have to work hard enough to not have to work hard, but if you don't factor this in, it ends up being a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where you just focus on growing and building, but you never actually take anything out of it. So it's sometimes good, even if you're not going to take out, to have some sort of targets to know, if I want to make 2, 3, 4, 5, 10K a month for myself out of the brand, how much do I need to make? And again, all of this comes back down to first principles, which is how much can I afford to buy my product for and sell my product for? And then on top of that, the layer in is how much can I afford to pay to acquire a customer? So your cost per acquisition here is how much you can afford to pay Meta, Facebook, whatever, TikTok, Google, all of your front-end acquisition channels. And remember, for every single brand universally that has ever existed, the lower you can acquire customers for, the more profitability you're going to have. But realistically speaking, if you don't really know what you're doing just yet, it's going to take you a bit of time and trial and error to figure out, okay, how much can I actually afford to cost? How much can I afford to pay to acquire a customer? And the way that you figure that out is just by becoming a good and better marketer. So again, having a deep, thorough understanding of your market. Again, separate strategy, so we'll not focus too much on this. So this is what your marketing CPA is, and we'll play around with this number. Your operational expense, so remember, is based on a per product, so per sale basis. All right. So what we do here, we total in our monthly expenses, okay, and then we divide it by the amount of sales that we need to make in a month in order to make sure that this is still profitable. Okay. The Amazon side of things, if you're not selling on Amazon, you can just zero that out for now. It's not a problem. Okay, you don't need to do that. You can just do it on here. If we just zero this out, again, without having too much complexity. But the Amazon stuff is pretty straightforward. You just plug in those numbers and it'll automatically add in on a per sale basis. The other thing everyone forgets to do is to add in tax. So you can play around with this number depending on where you are. So at the minute it's on 20%. So this is obviously 20% of the sale value. And again, this all auto calculates into your total cost per sale. Okay. And this is what will give you a number on the end. Now, remember, the key here is the more profit you can make on your first sale, the faster you're going to be able to grow, the faster you're going to be able to scale, the more you're going to be able to put into either take out yourself or keep in the business to grow it and put it back into marketing. Okay. So if we're saying we're on 8, you've got like $10 to play with here. So you can actually afford to spend $18 and then still barely break even. Again, we're not focusing on breaking even, but as a bare minimum, we need to make sure that this business is sustainable, is something that can grow. Okay. So this is super basic. It's really powerful though. So make sure that you implement and plug all of your numbers in here, because if the numbers don't work on a small scale, they're not going to work on a big scale. And one thing to add in when it comes to your marketing cost per acquisition, this can be up and down, or you know what I mean, it's different every day. So we're looking for an average over the month of what your cost per acquisition is. Okay, and again, this all comes back down to your skill as a marketer in creating content and making sure you have your correct digital plumbing on the back end to ensure that you can actually be an efficient marketer. So again, this is on a per product basis, per sale basis. And every single time we want to make sure that we can actually make profit, or bare minimum, worst case scenario, make sure we're at break even. Particularly so if you're in a market, or say for example you're selling supplements where you have monthly recurring revenue built in. Sometimes it's okay to break even on the first sale, because you know that customer's going to come back, and this is where you make your profit. This is what allows you to scale. So yeah, super simple, doesn't have to be overcomplicated. If you have any questions, you know where I am, send me a message and we'll hop on a call.